Welcome to Heian Haven. I'm Dawn. Today we're discussing Chapter 11 of the Tale of Genji, Hanachirusato. We'll start with our usual summary for shared context. Court life and Genji's troubles have become tedious. He decides to visit the former Reikei consort and her younger sister with whom he once had an affair. He has been supporting the former consort financially since the death of his father. On the way, he hears koto music coming from a house and stops to listen. He realizes he was once lovers with the lady who lived there and sent Kuramitsu in with a poem. The lady's reply poem expressed uncertainty, so Genji continued on his way. He spent his time with the former consort until late in the evening, sharing old memories and exchanging poems. He then went to visit her younger sister in the West Hall. Chapter 11 is quite short, about 3 pages, but it's packed with poetry and poetic references. We're going to talk a bit about that today, and of course, dive into that further on the next Waka Wednesday. Even though this chapter is so brief, Suematsu couldn't be bothered to include the first stop on Genji's trip, essentially leaving out half the story for this chapter. The footnotes are a vital resource for understanding more fully the poetic references this chapter is built around. Tyler, as usual, provides the most information, and I appreciated Suematsu's footnote concerning the relationship between the cuckoo and orange blossoms in poetry, which I consider to be the main theme of the chapter. In reference to the Hototo Gisu, which our other translators refer to as a cuckoo, Suematsu writes that it is a small bird which appears about the time when the orange trees blossom. It sings and is most active in the evening. In poetry, therefore, the orange blossom and this bird are associated, and they are both, the blossom and the bird, emblems of old memories. This brief chapter is built around old memories, but let's start with the chapter title, Hanachirusato. Suematsu translates the title as Villa of Falling Flowers. Waley is much the same, but using village instead of villa. In Tyler's brief discussion of the chapter title, he says that it literally translates to Village of Falling Flowers, as Waley translates, but he uses just falling flowers for his translation. Washburn decides to be more associative with his title, The Lady at the Villa of Scattering Orange Blossoms, pointing directly to the woman who is referred to as Hanachirusato, the former Reikei consort's younger sister. Seidensticker is an outlier in the group at this time. His translation is The Orange Blossoms. I like that Washburn's translation is in keeping with the other chapters that introduce us to one of the women in Genji's life, like Aoi or Murasaki. But there's another reference to falling flowers in the chapter that makes me like Tyler's falling flowers a little more. I'll circle back to this reference. Our seasonal references are 3, the Hototo Gisu or cuckoo, orange blossoms, and a mention that Genji is making this trip to visit his father's former consort during a break in the early summer rains of the 5th month. This would be early June. Our only clothing reference is a statement that Genji was traveling in disguise or inconspicuously. He stops at a house surrounded by trees to listen to a koto. Tyler and Washburn say he leaned out of his carriage, while Seidensticker and Waley say he alighted. I doubt he left his carriage. Now back to that koto. Waley calls it a zithern, tuned to the eastern mode. Tyler and Washburn use a zuma mode or key. Seidensticker says that the koto is played in concert with a 13-stringed Chinese koto. I'm intrigued by the differences in translation, and especially the choice to not translate certain words, like Hototo Gisu for Suematsu and Azuma for the key. One more difference in the description of this first house. There's a large, fragrant tree. Waley, Seidensticker, and Tyler call it a laurel. Tyler does explain in a footnote that the tree is actually the Katsura, which is associated with the Kamo festival, but Washburn doesn't translate the name of the tree and simply calls it what it is, Katsura. It's at this residence where we start to get into old memories, such as memories of the Kamo festival that smelling the Katsura stir up. Genji is fairly certain he has had an affair with the lady who lives there, and a cuckoo singing in her hedge urges him on to send in a poem. When her return poem expresses uncertainty, Kuramitsu quotes a poem saying, "One mistakes the hedge." This quoted poem is that other instance of falling flowers I mentioned earlier. The poem is quoted in an early commentary of the Tale of Genji, and Tyler provides it in a footnote. So thick the leaves in the garden where all the cherry petals have fallen, that one mistakes the hedge planted long ago. And Hototo Gisu shows up at the former consort's villa as well, while she and Genji share old memories late into the night. It's at this house that we have orange blossoms that not only smell beautifully fragrant, but the petals are also falling. giving us our second instance of falling flowers. I think that's why I'm more drawn to Tyler's title translation. It can allude to both references, while the other translations miss the more subtle one, since you have to know the poem or be provided a footnote to understand it. I would really love to go deeper into this chapter and analyze the juxtaposition between the lady at the first house, the former Goseki dancer, and Hanachirusato, the former consort's younger sister, as examples of how Genji's relationships play out, as well as the narrator's commentary, but I feel it's more important to stay on task and within this project's parameters. What stood out for you in this chapter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Join me next time for Chapter 12, Suma. Subscribe if you'd like to explore the Heian period of Japan with me through the tale of Genji.